I never wanted much, just silence, solitude, and space to breathe. That's why I bought the land, 150 acres of raw, untamed Montana, earth-dense pine forests, a gentle valley, and a mirror-like lake fed by a natural spring. I spent years turning it into a place of peace, built the cabin myself, raised a dam with my own hands to control the lake flow. Nothing industrial, just enough to keep the shoreline steady, prevent erosion, and support the trout. I retired there after decades of firefighting in Oregon. I'd seen enough of people and their recklessness. This was supposed to be my reward, the quiet life, but out here, quiet doesn't mean safe. The trouble started with tire tracks. I saw them one morning, just off the Western Ridge, a place I rarely went unless hunting season rolled around. Thick ruts cut through my land like scars, fresh and deep. I followed them, thinking it might be a lost hunter or a couple of drunk teens joyriding on a TV's dot instead. I found a row of orange-topped survey stakes lining the ridge, stretching deep into the marshy area just below the lake. Bright ribbons flapped in the wind like warning flags. Only no one had warned me. Later that week, a man named Brent Carrington showed up in a black Escalade that gleamed like polished glass. He wore designer boots, a silver belt buckle with no scratches, and a smile 2 sizes too wide. "Mr. Dalton, is it?" he asked, stepping out like he was shaking hands with an old friend. "We've been reviewing parcels around the basin. Incredible potential here." I said nothing at first, just waited for him to get to the point. He gestured toward the valley. "My company's planning a lakeside residential community, Silver Pines Estates. Environmentally conscious, high-end, but sustainable. We'd like to offer you a buyout on the western half of your land." I raised an eyebrow. "Western half is marshland?" He smiled again. "Yes, but with grading, infill, and proper drainage. Not for sale." He blinked. That smile twitched, just for a moment. "Sir," he said, smoothing his tie, "I think you misunderstand. The county's approved the plan. It's moving forward." I looked him dead in the eye. "Not on my land. It's not." He left with a polite nod, but he didn't mean it. I knew the type, money men with legal tricks, ready to bend truth until it snapped. Still, I figured that was the end of it. But a week later, bulldozers showed up. Not near the road, not on the county-owned side of the basin. On my property. They came in with speed blades down, trees falling, crews laying gravel paths like they already had the deed in hand. I stormed down to the site, waving my boundary maps and yelling for someone to stop. No one even looked up. When I finally found a foreman, he just shrugged. "You'll need to talk to Carrington Group," he said. So I did. Brent didn't answer. Instead, his assistant sent a letter citing something about reclassified easements and reclamation rights from an old irrigation grant buried in the county records. It was nonsense. Legal smoke meant to delay a fight until it was too expensive to win. Within 3 weeks, framing began on the first home's modular units, craned in and slapped together like it was some sort of race. I counted 35 houses in various stages of construction. They were calling it a soft launch. They even gave the lake a new name, Lake Serenity. I called the sheriff. He said it was a civil matter. I hired a lawyer. She told me the Carrington Group had a top-tier legal team in deep pockets. The best she could do was file a cease while we chased title clarity and permits. Brent was betting I'd run out of money or patience first. What he didn't realize was that I wasn't the kind of man who rolls over. Every nail they hammered into the soil felt like a slap in the face. They had no idea what kind of land they were building on or what rested quietly behind that hand-built dam just 30 feet uphill from their picture-perfect plans. They should have listened when I said no, because now I was done talking. They built fast. Within 6 weeks, Silver Pines Estates was no longer a concept on paper. It was a living, breathing parasite, planted squarely on land they didn't own. 35 boxy homes, identical in shape, smug in design, lined the lower basin like a rash. Concrete was poured over soft, marshy ground that had once been a sanctuary for migrating birds. Drainage trenches were dug and forgotten. Electrical poles popped up like weeds. Sod was rolled out like carpets to hide the mud beneath. And right in the middle of it all stood a sign. "Welcome to Silver Pines, luxury living by Lake Serenity. Lake, my land." And now, apparently, their rules. Brent Carrington didn't just build homes, he built an entire homeowners association overnight. With a board of hand-picked yesmen and a full charter of regulations, they operated like kings of a cardboard kingdom. They sent me a letter, printed on cream-colored stock with a gold-embossed header. It read, "As a neighboring resident, you are now subject to HOA guidelines regarding noise, landscape appearance, and structure visibility from the community road." Structure visibility. I had lived there for a decade, alone off-grid, and now they wanted me to paint my cabin to match their color palette. I crumpled the letter and burned it in my wood stove. They weren't just trespassing, they were colonizing. And the worst part, people were actually moving in, young couples with baby strollers, retirees in golf carts, remote tech workers looking for the rustic Montana vibe but demanding 5G towers and yoga studios. None of them questioned how their homes got there. None of them wondered why the roads buckled after a single rain. They believed Brent when he told them the development was built on stable, approved land, that the lake was controlled by the HOA, that I was the uncooperative local being phased out. I confronted him one last time, this time at the so-called community cookout. He stood at the center of the crowd in tailored jeans and a polo, flipping burgers like he belonged there. His name was stitched on the back of his windbreaker, as if the land itself had accepted him. I didn't wait for pleasantries. "You're building on my land," I said, loud enough for the music to stop. Brent didn't blink. "We've gone through the proper channels. Mr. Dalton, if you have concerns, speak to the HOA board." "I don't recognize your board," I growled. "And I sure as hell don't recognize your claim." He leaned in, lowering his voice. "You can't win this. I've got lawyers who eat guys like you for breakfast. You want to fight? Go ahead. But the money, the time, it'll bleed you dry." He smiled, the way sharks do. I stepped back, stared out over the laughing families, the portable fire pits, the smiling ignorance. They'd built their dream neighborhood on land that had a heartbeat, held back by my damn dot. The home sat barely 100 yards below it, on low ground that was only dry because I kept it that way. The floodplain had been natural for centuries, and I'd built that dam to protect the valley during snow melt, not for irrigation, not for leisure, for safety. But the HOA didn't want safety. They wanted control. I filed every complaint I could: zoning boards, environmental agencies, local news. No one listened, or rather, no one wanted the fight. Brent made sure of that. He donated 2 county campaigns. He hosted city council retreats on borrowed land. I started documenting everything: photos of the shifting soil, videos of standing water, emails, voicemail, threats from board members warning me to stop interfering. They thought I was stubborn. They had no idea I was patient. I stopped clearing the overflow drain. Let the algae build. Let the beavers go unchecked near the upper basin. I knew what would happen. Eventually, nature remembers, and she never forgets stolen ground. I gave them one final chance. Not out of fear, not out of weakness, out of principle. A man should be able to say, with his own voice, "This is my line." And once that line is crossed, they own what comes next. So I wrote the letter myself. No lawyers, no threats, just truth printed in black ink on white paper. Greater than to the residents of Silver Pines Estates. You are currently occupying private land without lawful consent. This area is a natural floodplain managed by a dam constructed by me, its legal owner. Due to improper development and failure to obtain my permission, the structural integrity of the flood basin is no longer assured. I urge you to vacate within 30 days. Consider this your only warning. Daniel Dalton. I made 40 copies. 1 went to Brent, 1 to each resident, 1 to the county. The rest certified mail to zoning boards, planning committees, and environmental watchdogs. I attached pictures, satellite images, land deeds, topographic maps showing the floodplain, drawn in thick, undeniable lines. I thought maybe, just maybe, reason would work. It didn't. The HOA responded with a cease and desist letter accusing me of sabotaging community peace. They claimed I was mentally unstable and demanded a psychological evaluation. One board member even called the sheriff, claiming I was threatening mass destruction. The deputy who showed up was a kid barely old enough to shave. He looked at my dam, then at the houses sitting beneath it. "You serious about this?" he asked. "Dead serious." I said. He didn't laugh. He just got back in his cruiser and drove off without another word. That night, Brent went on local news. He stood in front of the HOA sign, camera lights gleaming off his forehead, delivering a rehearsed speech about unfounded scare tactics and a local extremist disrupting the joy of new homeowners. "Silver Pines Estates is here to stay," he declared. "Our community is strong. Our foundation is secure." He was right about one thing: the community was strong, but its foundation, built on lies, paper, and mud. 3 days later, I caught movement near the dam trail. Cameras, motion sensor types mounted to trees like eyes, clearly installed by the HOA, probably to keep tabs on me. They didn't realize I'd been watching them first. From my hilltop cabin, I tracked every truck that came in, every homeowners meeting, every drainage ditch that failed to hold water after a storm. I had photos of puddles lapping at front porches, video of sinkholes forming beneath cheap foundations. The land was speaking louder and louder still. No one listened. Then came day 31. That morning, the fog hung low over the water like a curtain drawn over a stage. Quiet, calm, expectant. I sat on the edge of the dam, sipping black coffee from a tin cup, listening to the creak of branches and the distant hum of a generator from down below. Brent had begun phase 2: more homes, more roads, more destruction. I had reached my end, walked to the maintenance hatch and unlocked it with a key I hadn't used in 4 years. The chain was rusted, stiff, but the mechanism held. I knelt beside the sluice gate, hand on the wheel, and looked down the valley one last time. There were still people moving about, walking dogs, jogging, pushing strollers. Most had never read the letter. Brent probably told them it was a hoax or paranoia. I didn't want anyone hurt. That mattered to me, so I made a call. Just one. To a local news station. Turn your camera to Lake Serenity, I said. You're about to see the truth. Then I hung up, gripped the wheel and turned on at first. Nothing. Then came a deep, groaning sigh from the old wood and steel, like the land itself waking up. Water surged, slow and steady, through the release channel. It didn't roar. It crept hungry, patient, inevitable. By dusk, the first yard was underwater. By midnight, the HOA's community center was floating like a driftwood raft. I didn't light a match. I didn't swing a hammer. I just let nature do what she was always going to do. The headlines didn't say flood. They said man-made disaster. The next morning, the roads into Silver Pines were closed off by sheriff's tape and sawhorses. National Guard trucks rolled in by noon, and helicopters buzzed over the basin by afternoon. From my cabin porch, I watched them lower rescue baskets, pull residents from rooftops, and ferry out soaked furniture by the ton. No deaths, no injuries, but 35 homes all unlivable. The water didn't come in a wall. It came in a whisper. A slow, deliberate rise that seeped through foundations, filled crawl spaces, and turned Brent Carrington's dream into a swampy nightmare. I wasn't hiding. I stood by the dam when the authorities came. Game wardens, county engineers, deputies, a man in a FEMA windbreaker. They inspected the structure, reviewed my logs, flipped through the printed warnings I handed over. Every bolt was intact, every warning sent, every right preserved, and I asked them all the same question. Would you rather I hadn't opened it slowly? No one answered, but the FEMA guy gave me a long look, half respect, half awe. Then came Brent. That his Escalade didn't look so polished, now mud caked up to the windows, front grille cracked from where it kissed a tree stump. He stomped up the ridge, eyes bloodshot, phone clutched like a sword. You psychotic bastard, he screamed. You just destroyed millions in property. I'll sue you into the ground. I didn't flinch. You mean my property? I asked. Calmly, he stepped closer, jabbing a finger in my face. You think you're smart? You think anyone's gonna let this slide? No, I replied, but I've been trying to get someone to pay attention for months. Guess it took water to wake them up. That afternoon, while Brent tried to rant to news crews about eco-terrorism, a state zoning officer quietly unrolled a map behind him. Right there, bold and clear, was the floodplain. Every inch of Silver Pines was illegal construction. The permit Brent had used, forged. The deed's worthless. The HOA dissolved. Turns out, Brent had greased enough hands to get a few temporary permits, pushed through, but none of it held water literally or legally. Homeowners were furious, not at me, but at him. Dozens of lawsuits sprang up. Families who'd sunk their life savings into a dream were now demanding restitution. Insurance companies, they walked away. Pre-existing conditions, they said. And Brent, the state filed criminal charges for fraudulent development, illegal land use, and environmental damage. His assets were frozen. His company shuttered. The last time I saw him, he was in handcuffs, shouting something about countersuing me for emotional harm. I just nodded and waved him off. The dam had spoken. Weeks passed, then months. The homes, or what remained of them, were gutted and hauled away by the county. The roads cracked under the drying mud. The HOA sign, once proud and gold-lettered, lay face down in the reeds. Nature, slow and stubborn, began taking back her ground. Deer returned. So did the ducks. The air smelled like pine again. The lake, still and patient, returned to its proper shape. And me, I was left with peace. Real peace this time. The kind you earn, not the kind bought with glossy brochures and overpriced siding. I stood by the dam often in those days, hand resting on the wheel, eyes scanning the horizon, not for invaders, but for memory. I wasn't proud of what I did, but I wasn't sorry either. Brent and his empire came with lawyers, lies, and luxury promises. They thought land was just numbers on a spreadsheet. That silence meant surrender. That law always followed the loudest voice. But land is sacred, and I had warned them. I didn't destroy their homes, I simply stopped saving them.